anxious. You just want to be in and out of the market. But that is what we'll kind of start out with. Now, from here, what I do is I decide what timeframes I want to really enter on, and then I kind of work backwards. And well, a little bit of both ways, but for day trading, I like to focus on the daily power 3, right? Scalping, that's either going to be the 4-hour power 3 or the 1-hour power 3, right? And then swing trading, that's generally looking for monthly or quarterly. I can't even spell quarterly power 3, so we'll just do quarter power 3, right? So from here, I'm specifically day trading, so we'll go ahead and focus on this section, but you can adjust it or adjust the timeframes specifically for you. So hopping into here, what I specifically focus on is the daily power 3, and then what I go down to for my timeframes is I use the hour, and that is for my point of interest. We'll go over that, and then I use the M15 chart, and this is what I use for daily profile, which we can discuss. And then entry timeframes are my M5 through M1, and I'll use any of those timeframes there. So we'll go ahead and move over or down, and we'll kind of describe what I look for. So really the main thing I'm looking for is the direction of the daily candle, whether that is up or down. So if I have a direction where I am looking bearish, well, there is my direction, and that is what I'm focused on for the daily, right? So the main thing I'm looking for in the daily is the direction of the next daily candle, right? So yesterday I wanted to be, is today going to be moving higher or lower, right? So I'm asking that every single day. After I have that, I'm generally looking for a point of interest that aligns with that, right? And so a really easy one is just a liquidity sweep or turtle soup, right? So we have some sort of old high resting that gets taken, right, around New York or London, and that gets into daily profile. Let's say we have this paired with a PD array. We'll use this. Right. Let's say we have an order block here. Now we have inducement, right? So that's another one I look for. There's a few other ones, but really it's up to you to decide what type of point of interest you like to look for. But now that I have this, my direction, I have my point of interest, then I go down to the M15, right? And this is where I get into daily profiles, but essentially I'm trying to capture the daily range. So for instance, let's say London reaches up into my point of interest right there, and then displaces lower. This is where I'm looking for daily to go lower, and I have some sort of drawn liquidity. I'm looking for this continuation through New York, right? And that's where you get your classic sell day, right? Now let's say we open up and we kind of just drift up, right, into our point of interest in New York. Now we're going to get our New York reversal to look something like that, right? Now let's say, I won't draw it out again, but now let's say instead we consolidate through London. In New York, I'm looking for a manipulation in the opposite direction to go lower, right? So you can see how I go from the daily to the hourly to the profile. And then once I get down to my entry time frame, it's pretty easy because it's either going to be in here, right, for a New York continuation lower, or catching the reversal here, or after the manipulation here. So that, does everyone kind of understand that? I don't know if people chat in the sidebar, but that's how I get my narrative. If you want me to expand on any point of that, I can. But once I'm down into an entry, basically there's a few things I look for, right? So the first one would be, or my first possible entry would be this turtle soup in here, right? I generally like to see that paired with SMT, right? Now, if I miss that one, right? If there's an inversion in here, I can look to get in on this. If I miss that, I can use the change in the state of delivery, or after that, retracement to fair value gap. And then after this, if I miss all those, I'm generally looking for some sort of mitigation, right? So if price retraces back up into old order blocks, I'll look to sell. Or if we have, once again, another sweep, because I'm anticipating the formation of an intermediate term high here to continue lower. So does that, I don't know if there's anywhere to get feedback, if it makes sense or not. But if that makes sense, we can go further, or if you have questions. It's really just, I'll kind of explain it this way one more time. I have the daily candle, right? Wherever we're at in the daily candle, I'm just anticipating the formation, right? So if we're in a New York reversal, it's going to look like this, right? But I'm anticipating it to look like that, right? If we're in a classic sell, I'm anticipating it to look like this. Yet when I'm selling, it's looking like that, right? And then New York manipulation similarly. But with that, so really my bias is I have my daily bias, which we can go into my daily time frame and I'll show you which days I've had bias, which days I don't, because I have a very specific way that I look for bias. But when I have bias that next day, this is the protocol I follow. So I look at my daily profile, my hourly point of interest, then my entry time frame is really the last part of it. So a lot of people are like, what is your favorite entry model, all that. I genuinely don't care really what my entry is. It's more so once I have this actual understanding of where price is going, I'm just going to get in at the right time, right? And if you want me to talk about 8:30, 9:30, 10, we can go over that as well. But if that all makes sense, we can kind of find an example. Let's see. Tuesday, we'll go to ES because it was easier here. We'll just do a quick rundown and then I can, in your tweet, you mentioned you also look for hourly change in state of delivery. So I generally look for that in terms of the weekly profile, right? So here's a little bit for you. In terms of the daily profile, right? Say we have a New York reversal. I'm looking for the 15-minute change in state delivery, right? In terms of the weekly profile, I'm using the hourly change in state of delivery. So let me quickly, I'll go to my Instagram real quick and find an example, right? So like here's an example of just a weekly, oops, well, give me a second to clean this up. Here's an example of a weekly profile, right? Sorry, it's a little blurry, but you can see my focus on it is this high being formed, but what is it paired with? Hourly change in state of delivery, right? We go to another week, right? You'll see it's always similar. Delete this one. We form a low, but what is it paired with? Hourly change in state of delivery, right? Let's see. But for like daily bias, for example, you can just kind of replay. It's like here, right? I don't need to, well, I don't trade Mondays. So I'll let Monday form. But I don't need to have bias on this day. But what I do notice is we swept this high and Q didn't. So we have an SMT. Now, if you've seen my daily bias video, we swept previous day high, could not close outside of it, and we end up actually closing below this one as well. So this is an outside bar, didn't have to go all the way down here, but it's very aggressive to the downside. So I can either be looking for previous day low, but it's pretty obvious that if we're going to fail this side of the range, we're likely to see what side of the range here, right? If you also mark out, we have discount and premium. We'd like to see price return down into here, right? So then the next day I'm looking bearish, right? Now, how about hourly point of interest here, right? So we'll go ahead and replay. So what I was looking for is a potential SMT to form here, right? Between ES and NQ. It didn't happen. But let's just take, for an example, the point of interest I was talking about in the first little drawing there. Do we have any swing highs, right? Because if we run a swing high with bearish order flow, that's a possible area to sell. Now, when we form a swing high here over this swing high, we can't displace it all, right? Why would I not be expecting for this to reach here? Well, this is where the time of day in our daily profile comes in, right? So we'll open that up. If you notice, we form this high between 2 to 5 a.m., right? So on a classic sell day, I like to see London form the high in here and then get distribution through New York AM session, right? So now if I'm going down to a 5-minute and I'm going, I start my session at 8:30, right? Or right around there. So skipping ahead, you can see we are respecting bearish PD arrays moving lower. Right? Fairly obvious. So here at 8:30, you can see, well, you can't but there's an SMT here, right? But the main important thing is we have price reaching up into a fair value gap or an important level, this series of up close candles right there before getting closed below. That's an order block, right? So now we have a series of up close candles into an order block that gets closed below. So now we have a propulsion block, right? And a lot of times on classic sell days, when a lot of people want to sell above midnight open, that's like almost never going to happen, right? Because this distribution is going to occur. It's not going to go, oh, let's go back above midnight to go sell off. Like it's not going to round trip, another 20 points to sell off 40 more, right? It's just going to go down. So with that understanding, we know a propulsion block. See, the opening price of this should be very sensitive. Price shouldn't, or if it does, react very aggressively off the mean threshold of this, right? So if I was going to look to take an entry, could put it here, right? And since we have an SMT on this high, I could put it here, or if I wanted to be a little safer, could put it up there, right? But see how this works out. Well, I think on ES it didn't fill, on NQ it did. So I can show that, but we'll just let this play out, right? You can see it gets the sell off. So, and then where would I target this? Well, let's go back to the 15-minute chart because that is what I use for the daily profile. And if we're projecting the London range from this high to this low, right? And sell off. And there we hit our max expansion for the day. So I'm not really anticipating a lot more daily range. So a lot of people will try to resell this retracement. It doesn't make sense to me because if you look at the daily range, right, we've already won 60 points, right? And on ES, that's a fairly decent sized daily range, right? So the last thing I was going to talk about is, let's go back to the 5-minute. 8:30, 9:30, 10, right? And you can go study these within the daily profile, but a lot of times these times will either create a Judas swing or an order block, right? So a lot of times 8:30, right, if bearish, will reach higher, then go lower, right? These up close candles, which is the Judas swing, also forms an order block, right? So if you notice here, it just kind of falls right there. Once again, falls right there. You can see the up close candles that are formed. And then you may have seen me tweet this out the other day if you follow me at all, but a lot of times on a sell off like this, where we've reached the max expansion, this 10 a.m. or the open of the new 4-hour candle is going to provide the low of the day most of the time, or at least an area to provide retracement. So just random things, but you'll notice it if you watch your chart. But we can go to the same day on NQ and I'll show you how it differed. let's see, right? And so looking at the same thing, we swept previous highs, 3-day look back, SMT, next day going lower, right? Hourly, similar thing, swept these highs, distribute lower. I use the 5-minute. You can use the 15-minute for the daily profile, but I use my 5-minute for entry. And here is, right, reach up into there, form the order block, and that creates expansion, right? So let's see if there's any questions. Yeah, so I have them all marked out. I use midnight open as a reference, 8:30, because that's when the news embargo lifts, and then New York open, which is just 9:30, right?